very good evening to you. It is the 28th day of August, and this is the big story. Tonight, the arrest and subsequent release on a 5 million bond of Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu is our big story tonight. Mwilu is scheduled to appear before court tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, says Mwilu faces charges of abuse of office, receiving bribes and failing to pay taxes. He is part of the DPP's statement on this high-profile arrest, actually the highest so far in the ongoing fight against graft that is gaining momentum since Haji's appointment.
The evidence in our possession reveals that 1. Lady Justice Mwilu abused her office for personal gain, accepted a gift in the form of money in circumstances which undermined public confidence in the integrity of her office, obtaining execution of a security belonging to Imperial Bank Limited, now in receivership by false pretense, unlawful failure to pay taxes, conducted herself in disregard of the law. In view of the above, I have concluded that the evidence is sufficient with a reasonable prospect of conviction, and it is in the public interest that criminal proceedings should be preferred.
That was DPP Nordin Haji this afternoon. Some lawyers have termed this case as being rather awkward, with the Deputy Chief Justice appearing before a court that is lower in stature than the one she serves in. So how will this pan out, and what are the implications? Well, that forms part of our conversation tonight, and we are pleased to welcome Martha Karua, the North Kenya party leader, who is a renowned lawyer and former Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister, and also lawyers Duncan Okach will be in studio in a couple of minutes with me. We will seek to speak to lawyer Elisha Ongoy as well in the course of this discussion. But before we get there, our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, joins us live from the Supreme Court with a background report on this developing story. Sophia, good evening. Good to speak to you. So first of all, the minute this broke, there was speculation about, you remember that bite by President Uhuru Kenyatta after his election was nullified by the Supreme Court, and he said, we shall revisit. So there are those who are saying this is revisiting, this is it. What are you hearing?
Good evening to you, Linda. Indeed, there's a lot of speculation rife on social media throughout the day today following the arrest of the DCJ, Philomena Mwilu. And yes, Kenyans, many will remember moments after that historical nullification, the first time ever presidential election has been nullified in Africa happened. Then we saw President Uhuru Kenyatta address a roadside rally in Kenyans, and in essence saying that we will revisit. And in fact, he went on ahead to describe the Supreme Court judges as wakora, thugs, Linda. And so in light of this arrest and charges against the DCJ, a lot of speculation, a lot of people are reading, I beg your pardon, into what could have led to this. And some of those we are seeing opining on this is around that these charges are said to have come up in 2013. At the time, she was a Court of Appeal judge. And so the question that begs is why weren't they brought against her at the time? And number two, at the time she was being vetted for the position of Deputy Chief Justice, also why didn't these issues come up is what we are hearing from some of the lawyers saying, why did it take so long for these charges to be presented, that these are matters that have been there for quite some time, and so there's concern about that. But also some of the things we saw happen even in the lead up to the repeat presidential election, 2 days in fact, on the 24th of October, the DCJ's bodyguard was shot and seriously injured. Again, those read foul play into that as to intimidation, because remember the court was meant to sit, the Supreme Court, the next day on the 25th to hear a case that was brought before the court seeking to find the IEBC unprepared and not eligible, if you like, to conduct a repeat election. So there was that. But that notwithstanding, Linda, that she was one of the 4 judges that, of course, ruled for the nullification, the majority vote against the upholding of the election of Uhuru Kenyatta as it had been announced. We have seen several petitions that were brought to the Judicial Service Commission, petitions even against the CJ on their removal, gross misconduct. But clearly, those have not gained much mileage. We've not seen much come out of them. And so this is seen as the next step to by those who are criticizing this process. But this specific question was put to the Director of Public Prosecutions during his press conference earlier, and he said he's an independent office. This is not a revisit, but the context of it is important, as some of the analysts have argued, because also this comes in the backdrop of the slashing of the judiciary budget, and that led the Chief Justice himself, who's also the President of the Supreme Court, to address the nation to say that that significant cut in the budgetary allocation to the judiciary will affect their operations. Remember, backdating of cases and rather backlog has been a serious problem. So there's been many events and occurrences around this, and I'm sure the other judges who also ruled against upholding that election may be sitting nervous, is what we're hearing tonight following that arrest and charges leveled against the DCJ, Linda.
Listen, it's interesting that you say that some of these allegations first came up in 2013, because then one would ask the question, so the DCJ went through vetting, the whole vetting process, so how did she pass through that? But then, interestingly so, this is not the first time we are seeing a senior judge charge Sophia. We've had cases like this before, haven't we?
We have had cases like this before in as far as officers of the court. Of course, this is the highest officer, the Deputy Chief Justice, so that's quite significant. But in 2003, the late Justice Samuel Ogok was charged with fraudulently acquiring monies by false pretenses. And in that particular case, it was that he obtained money from a former receiver manager of the then Grand Regency Hotel. He denied this charges, but he chose, however, to quit. He later passed away. Then in 2008 actually, Justice J.B.M. Kariuki was charged for allegedly stabbing a motorist. He denied the charges, and a year later, he was acquitted for lack of evidence. Now, during the term of his trial, Linda, he sat out. He did not preside any cases, but he continued to receive his benefits. But after this matter was canvassed and dealt with, he then went back to serve as a judge. And then there was another matter in 2009, Justice Said Chitembwe, charged with fraudulently making payments to a law firm when he was company secretary at NSSF before he became a judge. Again, during the time of his case, he did not preside any cases, but then thereafter he went back to work. So we will be waiting to see how this will be handled, because she is the Deputy Chief Justice. There are matters that usually are brought before the Supreme Court. So will she opt to sit out? Will there be a petition presented to the JSC to find that in fact disciplinary action should be taken? As some of the questions, we'll be waiting to see how they are dealt with going forward.
Sophia, on that petition presented to the JSC, we know their mandate is to receive, investigate and resolve complaints against judges. Philomena Mwilu, apart from being the DCJ, is also a member of the JSC. And there's also the question of quorum. How will this play out? Because automatically she gets to sit out of this one. So we have a quorum hitch there.
Yes, but what makes it a problem in as far as quorum hitch, Linda, is because the DCJ, of course, membership of the Judicial Service Commission, there are 11 members. You have the Chief Justice, you have a member of the Supreme Court, a representative elected by the judges of the Supreme Court, then a representative from the Court of Appeal, the High Court, magistrate, 2 representatives from the Law Society of Kenya, 2 members of the public appointed by the President, of course, the Attorney General, and a nominee from the Public Service Commission. The situation we find ourselves in now is that, you remember there was concern around the representative of the Court of Appeal to the JSC, that's Justice Warsame. He had been seating in the JSC, however his term expired, but his colleagues in the Court of Appeal reappointed him. But then Parliament and the President's advising that he be vetted, then to go back to his position, a move that was strongly opposed by the Law Society of Kenya, by the JSC itself, writing to say that that was out of order because according to the law it clearly stipulates that he should not. So what that leaves us in a situation where we do not have a confirmed Court of Appeal representative. Also, the Attorney General is yet to take his rightful position in the JSC to be sworn in. The same applies to the two representatives of the members of the public as well as the PSC nominee. So you have 5 members that are yet to substantially fill their positions. Now, if Philomena Mwilu decides to opt out of sitting in the JSC, being a 6th member, that renders the JSC impotent. Constitutionally, it cannot sit, it cannot carry out business. So that is a huge concern. And as to whether if somebody moved to say, to begin proceedings against her of gross misconduct, that her facing criminal charges, she should not continue to serve, and that a tribunal should be created by the President. This is one we'll wait to see, because on one hand, this matter is being dealt with by the court. So would JSC want to take over as well? And then you have these two institutions dealing with the matter. What happens when they reach differing conclusions? So we wait to see how they canvass this. But as it stands, JSC constitutionally is weakened. Linda.
Basically, we're looking at a crippled JSC. So that means the prospects of a petition are almost nil as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed, Linda.
All right, Sophia, there is also that aspect of a jinxed seat. This is not the first DCJ that we are saying being this happening to. Of course, she's not been hounded out of office as yet. But we had Nancy Barasa after that whole pinching episode in some mall. And then we had Kalpana Rawal as well. And then now we have Philomena Mwilu. And then those who are saying, guys, this is a jinxed seat. What are you hearing?
Yes, definitely. There are those who are saying this is that position you want to stay away from, more like IEBC. And when you hear you're going to be IEBC chair or CEO going by the past events, you want to think twice. But yes, as you rightfully put it, there was the first DCJ, Nancy Barasa, and for her, it was that incident at the village market, accused of pinching the nose of a guard. There were guns that were drawn at the time. She was taken through a tribunal for her that in fact recommended that she be removed, and so her term left. For Kalpana Rawal, who took over from Barasa, it was the question around the retirement age. And acrimonious it was because she opposed what the current law stands, which is 70 years, and she had turned 70. She, in her argument, maintained when she was employed, the law at the time was 74, so she argued she should then retire at that time. But because the court found in the favor of the current law as it stands, she got out as DCJ. And then now we have Philomena Mwilu, and so we will wait to see how this plays out. Will she choose to stay away as these proceedings continue? You'd imagine it would be an awkward situation for her to sit in the Supreme Court, and then on the next week or the next day she's sitting being charged. We'll wait to see how they'll decide to treat this particular matter. But also some of the speculation going back to that, you saw the likes of Ndi earlier on saying that this is the grooming of other judges to take over not only the DCJ position, and the names we've had thrown around is that of Justice Njoki Ndongo, because you remember the CJ term will be expiring before the 2022 elections, and so it was largely seen that when his term comes to an end because of his age, then the DCJ Philomena Mwilu would be taking over. But then if in fact events do play out according to a lot of the speculation we are seeing, there are those who are saying this is the creation of Ndongo Njoki as Kenya's CJ, next CJ. A lot of politics, a lot of opinions out there, but Linda, it's a wait and see.
Yeah, there's been lots of speculation from we shall revisit to this is a ploy to create space for Njoki Ndongo. But then there are also those who say, finally, this country is on the right path in terms of fighting for corruption. But Sophia, indulge me if you may, this places Philomena Mwilu in a very difficult position because right now she is the DCJ, still in office, and now with these corruption charges against her, depending on how this goes, probably she'll still have to carry out judicial matters. This places her in a very difficult position, and it places the judiciary in a difficult position, and the CJ as well.
It does, Linda. And you remember the DPP, as he made his statement earlier, he indicated that before the arrest of the DCJ, he notified the CJ. And when he was asked why he felt the need to notify the CJ, he said it was not to request permission, but in essence, it was out of respect. Because remember, this judiciary is is an arm of government.
Yeah.
So that in essence, for you to be arresting and charging the second in command in an arm of government, it's a serious affair. And so this is a dicey one for the judiciary, for the JSC, for the CJ himself. And we'll wait to see if, in fact, the JSC, led by the Chief Justice, will be coming out with a statement to shed light as to how they intend to handle this matter. But for the DCJ, and you saw she has a battery of lawyers in her camp, led by Senior Counsel James Orengo. You saw Mogeni there, Khaminwa as well. And it has not gone without noticing that some of these counsel that were there are those that were in the petition opposing President Uhuru Kenyatta's election, the first one, if I may say so. So it's going to be a dicey situation that tomorrow, for instance, she's meant to appear in court at 9 a.m. So if there's a matter before the Supreme Court at the time, she cannot appear. So will she, like the judges I mentioned earlier, who have in the past faced charges, opted to stay out for the duration of the time? We will wait to see. But also there's a ruling that came out earlier today concerning the NLC boss, that's Swazuri. There was a challenge as to whether he should be allowed back to the office. Was a constitutional officer facing criminal charges, as we are seeing in this instance with Philomena Mwilu, is allowed to go to the office.
Okay.
And the finding in this particular matter says that yes, he can go. However, there will need to be some pre-arrangement and as far as the EACC and other investigatory organs being informed of his intention to go to the office and perhaps accompanied to ensure he does not interact with those who would be witnesses. But in this particular instance, it's not charges she's facing from her time in the Supreme Court or as a judge of the Supreme Court. So if in fact there will be that kind of pursuit from her legal team, whether she can continue to serve, we'll wait to see the directions that will emanate from that if we get there in the first place, Linda.
Sophia Wanuna, our lead reporter, as always, thank you so much for your contribution to the big story this evening, focusing on Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu. And as she did mention, the DPP had a lot to say in the afternoon presser, and part of it was that he met Chief Justice David Maraga and just informed him of their decision. But he also talked a little bit about the justice system, and he said, if I may quote him, justice system only works if judges are fair and just. It won't work if they use their position to enrich themselves. Let's listen in to part of what else he had to say on that.
But the justice system only works if lawyers, prosecutors, magistrates, and judges are fair and just. There can be no justice if lawyers, prosecutors, magistrates, judges, and investigators who are court officials use their position to enrich themselves at the expense of the Kenyan people. I believe that the majority of court officials are honest, hard-working Kenyans who have offered their time and talents in the service of their country.
That is DPP Nuruddin Haji. Allow me now to bring in Duncan Okach, who's a lawyer. He's joining us here in studio. But later on, we'll also be engaging Martha Karua in her place as a legal mind, having served as a justice minister, just to pick a mind on what exactly is happening in the country. Duncan, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us on The Big Story. First of all, your quick reaction. Philomena Mwilu in court, arrested, and finally released on a 5 million shilling bond. Your quick reaction on this?
Linda, thank you so much. My reaction on that is that it is as unexpected as ever. And most Kenyans are asking the question whether a judge can actually be arrested and arraigned before a court, and more so an inferior court to where the judge is actually used to. But actually, the rule of the law acts like that. It sees no capacity, it does not know your position. The only person who is above the law, based on the Constitution, is the president, and only during the tenure of the presidency itself. After that, you can actually even arraign a president in court based on actions that he undertook during that particular period that he was a president. The only surprising thing is that there was no information of any investigations against her. There was no information of any expected arrest, as we are used to. Most of these high-profile arrests, we have had a prelude of a period where we know there's some investigation of sorts, there are some individuals who are supposed to be arrested, there's this corruption scandal. So it's actually expected. The only point is that when these people are actually arrested because of their stature, it becomes surprising. But this one has another element because of the position in the judiciary and the JSC itself, and also the surprise element whereby there was no leakage of any investigations against her.
Duncan, let's look at the charges because you understand she faces numerous counts of stealing, abuse of office, unlawful, failure to pay taxes, and additionally investigators are claiming that she acted in contravention of the Leadership and Integrity Act by accepting a personal loan of 12 million shillings from Imperial Bank. I was just having a conversation with Sophia Wanuna, and some of these allegations actually go back to 2013. And so the question someone would ask is, why would someone wait all those years to bring this up now?
Linda, that is the other side of the coin. Because we always say that as much as justice is blind, it will actually cut both ways. It should also not be seen that it is actually discriminative or it's actually seeking a certain agenda. It should not be a means to an end. So that it should not be seen that it can be used or abused by any individual, depending with which side you want to support. Such that if these allegations were actually there, if these crimes, according to them, the alleged crimes were committed, my take is that before she ascended even to that particular seat of Deputy Chief Justice, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission had a chance to actually vet her and give any aspersions that they had towards her character. Remember, the vetting of a Chief Justice or a Deputy Chief Justice is a very elaborate exercise, which actually even ends up in Parliament. So that if all these investigatory and agencies which were supposed to have spearheaded and brought out all these issues at that point did not give any reservations at that particular point, it therefore begs the question, why now? Why are these particular crimes, which were committed, as you rightly say, quite some time back, 2013, 2016, some, and as far as that, are being brought out at this particular stage? What comes to mind is the words of our president, that they will revisit. Remember, Philomena Mwilu was one among the Supreme Court judges who actually ruled in favor of the petition filed by the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, such that when these issues come at this particular point, it lends credence to some faction who will actually say that it is actually a follow-up to the revisiting statement by the president, and it actually means that all these other judges may actually be saying that maybe something can be unearthed today. What it does is that the good fight against corruption, which has been propagated and spearheaded by what we call the fearsome twins, that is the Honorable DPP and the Director of Criminal Investigations, will actually start taking a turn. And you have seen even in the manner of arrests. I had the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution castigating even the manner of arrests, so that it is meant to just be a sideshow. But if these particular actions will have taken place, let's say the last month but one, or something that has been unearthed, then to an extent, no one will have such suspicion.
Okay.
But again, Linda, I have to mention that there is no limitation in law in terms of a criminal offense.
Yeah,
Whether
okay.
you committed it the next day after you were born, or you committed it yesterday, it is still a criminal offense.
Whichever way you have to account for it. Duncan Okat, stay with me. We're taking a break here on The Big Story, but when we come back, we'll be speaking to Martha Karua as well, just to pick a mind on the happenings of today. Let's take that break. We'll be back.